Welcome to the Mortgage Mayhem podcast, where the mortgage game meets real life, real talk, and a whole lot of chaos. We break down the deals, the drama, and the data behind the scenes of real estate finance, with a twist of street smarts, savvy, and a touch of madness. Before we dive in, here's the deal: the Mortgage Mayhem podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not attorneys, CPAs, or licensed financial advisors, and nothing you hear on this show should be taken as legal, financial, or investment advice. Always consult a licensed professional before making financial decisions. Welcome.
Hello. We are back. Yeah. Welcome to the Mortgage Mayhem podcast. Of course, I'm Greg Smalley, G Money. And today's show is loaded with drama, power moves, and money plays you don't want to miss. Let's get right into it. Today's show is going to be, first of all, I hope everybody had a great weekend. I know I did. It was pretty slow, but a lot of good things happened over the weekend. So I like my weekends to be like that. Weekends are meant to relax, recharge. So that's exactly what I was able to do. But hope everybody had a great weekend. Before we get started, I just want to kind of get this out for everybody who's in the Flint, Saginaw, Detroit area. The Men of Kappa Alpha Psi Flint Alumni Chapter is having their Kappa Derby Day Party from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, May 3rd, 2025 at Soothing Tunes, which is located at 1408 Hempfield Road, Flint, Michigan, 48507. Music will be provided by Timeless Entertainment. If you don't have tickets are $30 per person. Food will be provided, and there will be a cash bar. If you want to RSVP, you can RSVP at Eventbrite by May 1st, 2025. That's the Flint Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi, and the Kappa Derby Day Party should be fun. They're going to have a derby dress attire, a best dress contest, and the attire is derby dress. So ladies, gentlemen, if you're looking to have a good time, you don't have anything to do on Saturday from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m., the Men of Kappa Alpha Psi Flint Alumni Chapter, which I'm a part of that chapter as well, will be having the Kappa Derby Day Party. Should be fun, guys. So if you're out and you're in the Flint area, you want something to do, pull up. All right? Okay. So let's get into the show today. It's a lot going on out there. NFL collusion claims over Shedeur Sanders. DTE Energy wants 11% rate hike. Trump fires foreign interference warning at Obama. Army base flipped Trump's fortress upside down. Pamela Goodwine makes Kentucky Supreme Court history. JPMorgan Chase sues over ATM infinite money glitch. Ryan Coogler signs mega deal with Warner Brothers. Pope Francis's humble funeral plans. George Santos sentenced for fraud. A guy who I think we're going to shine light on today. You, our friend Charles launches Black-owned spirits platform. And of course, we have the mortgage and real estate hacks of the week. And then we're going to do our deep dive into a company called National Business Capital. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. And I love doing this, man. This is so great. I couldn't wait to get back here today so we can, break these things down. Of course, this is always fun. And it's serious at the same time because, when I started or when I decided to do this, I just wanted to make sure that we had, a great show for you guys. I wanted to be impactful. I wanted to be educational. But more so than anything, I wanted to be fun. I'm not really looking to have all this fanfare. I want to build it from the ground up. So, Mondays and Tuesdays from 12 to 2, we'll be right here. I need you guys to start subscribing and following us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, of course, YouTube, just so I can kind of get in the algorithm and we can start building the show because I'm not going anywhere, Lord willing. And I just want to be able to, have a place where you can come get information, also learn about the real estate game, of course, and then, kind of bring you up on what I deem are some of the current events that I think are necessary. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Stephen A. Smith accusing 32 NFL team owners of collusion while comparing Shedeur Sanders to Colin Kaepernick amid the 2025 draft drama. And trust you me, it was drama. Regardless of his bravado, let's bring Stephen A. up on the screen. And basically, where is I'm at? Okay. Regardless of his bravado, it's freaking unfair. ESPN analyst Stephen A. Smith accuses 32 NFL team owners of collusion while comparing Deion Sanders' son, Shedeur Sanders, to ousted baller Colin Kaepernick amid Shedeur 2025 draft drama. Although Shedeur has since been drafted by the Cleveland Browns, it didn't happen until the 5th round, making him the 144th overall pick. The drama even caught the attention of President Donald Trump. On April 25th, Stephen A. Smith initially tweeted, "This is a damn disgrace. How in the hell is Shedeur Sanders not off the board, not drafted yet? Y'all still think this doesn't have anything to do with teams hating on Deion Sanders? This kid is a first rounder. In a different way, this is Kaepernick all over again, being kept out. A damn disgrace. I don't care what anyone says." Later that night, he tweeted, "Someone just texted me this message and they are absolutely correct. This is a bad look for the NFL. This feels like Kaepernick level collusion," Smith continued. "All the hard work the NFL league offices puts into eradicate these kinds of perceptions, only to turn around and watch as the owners look like they're colluding, messing up everything. What has been done to Shedeur would outshine everything else in the draft. We'll never believe this is about just talent evaluations again." On April 26, Shedeur Sanders was finally selected and drafted by the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round, 144th overall. Nick Smith tweeted a link to his response to the drama and said, "Shame on you. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round." On his show, he added, "This is some BS. And I'm going to say that while in the same breath conceding and acknowledging that Shedeur Sanders is not blameless here. Primetime Deion Sanders is not blameless here. If you're the the National Football League, clearly it's not about talent anymore. It's about something else. And I'm going to tell you, I spent a large amount of the last 24 hours thinking about collusion. All right. So let me give you my take on it. You know, when I first, because I pretty much watched it all weekend as well. And I was stunned because I thought, Shedeur put enough game on tape for NFL teams definitely to not have him drop to the 5th round. I thought he should have been a first round pick as well. But at the same time, we have to remember the NFL is the good old boy network, right? So if you're not playing the game the way they want you to play the game, then they'll sun you. They'll show you. They'll make sure you understand who league it really is. And I just think Dion being who Dion is, and his sons being his sons, Dion took them down a road, which is not a bad road because confidence is key, right? But when you're dealing with these type of individuals and you're looking for them to give you a life that you could have only imagined, not to say because Shedeur's made money, Dion's been rich for a long time. Shedeur's rich. Shedeur's rich now through NIL. But at the end of the day, the goal is to make it to the NFL, right? Dad made it to the NFL. You want to make it to the NFL as well. But it's certain ways you have to go about it, unfortunately, in order to not, you don't have to sell out, so to speak, but you have to show some grace. You can't be overly arrogant. And I think when these guys look at people like Dion and Shedeur, they look at arrogance. They look at individuals who think that, what they say, what they want to do, should be the only thing that matters. And you can't really be like that with these guys. These guys, they don't play around when it comes to their league. And when they're looking at, someone of our ilk, our color, then they want you to be a little humble. Especially if you're not just a clear cut, all that player when others, have certain things that they may think about you that doesn't allow you to just be a clear cut, like Dion was when he came out. He was clear cut. Nobody could do anything with him. He was who he was. Shedeur, in this case, there were others who, people could look at and say, okay, he's not just the best in the class. He's one of the best, but the way he walks around, you would think he was the best. And that's the kind of attitude he's supposed to have. But, you have to kind of disguise it a little bit. You can be confident. You can, talk your talk, walk your walk, but you have to understand who you're dealing with at the end of the day, right? And it was painstaking to sit there and watch this kid, not get his just due. But he had to know, or they had to have an inkling of a thought that this could potentially happen, just so the NFL could show Dion and his sons that, look, at the end of the day, y'all are who y'all are, but don't forget who we are. We are the ones who's going to be signing these checks for Shedeur. We were the ones who were signing them checks for Dion. We gave Dion an opportunity to be great. We could have, snatched the rug from up under him as well. So I think it was more of a pow, pow, get it together, young man, because the league is bigger than you. But I do feel like it was some collusion there. I think the owners, a lot of people say that Shedeur was arrogant in interviews. Dion was all in videos on different, platforms saying that they'll determine where he wants to go. He'll make, if it's somebody that they don't agree with, they'll make sure that he doesn't go there. They, brought up the Manning brothers, Eli, when he was supposed to go to certain teams, and they didn't want him to be down south. They wanted him to be on the East Coast. So it was kind of one of those type of moves, but at the same time, the Mannings are the Mannings. They are the color of the owners in the NFL. So, and then on top of that, they did it in a way where it was a little bit more quiet, a little less arrogant. So although they let it come out of their mouth, and that's probably what actually happened. Us, we flamboyant, we watch all the, how Shedeur was getting down. And I'm saying Shedeur should have been out there acting the way he was acting, because to me, Shedeur's really a good kid, because you ain't ever hear nothing bad about Shedeur off the field. It sounded like Shedeur was taking care of his business off the field. You ain't see him, out here running around with this female, that female. He kind of kept his head down and, let his game do the talking for him. And I like that. But once it got to the point where it's time to go to the next level, it seems like, maybe some of that pent up arrogance came out, and these owners and personnel for the owners, they look for you to come in, somewhat humble. And if they don't feel like that's what you're doing, they have a way to humble you. And that's exactly what they did. They humbled him. I think he needed it. He's in Cleveland now. Cleveland is somewhat similar to Colorado when it comes to weather. It's just not as nice as Colorado as far as scenery is concerned. I used to live in Cleveland for a number of years, so I know exactly, what the city is about. But I think it was just one of those things where everything that happened needed to happen. I think Dion, I think Shedeur, I just think the family needed to have that wake-up call. And now Shedeur can go to Cleveland, put his head down, and get busy, because that's going to be the next step. It was only so much his daddy could do. Now it's all on him. He can't, look to lean. He's not under the umbrella of the great Shedeur Sanders anymore. It's all about Shedeur, so he's going to have to step up to the plate and ball. If he don't ball, then, we'll see him on the sidelines with a clipboard and, a lot of people running around the media, talking about he should be playing, why isn't he playing, and then we'll be back to the drama. So let's wish everybody well. We, was just happy that he did get, picked up by Cleveland, regardless of where he was picked up. I can say that, but I know in the back of their mind, they lost a lot of money. I think I seen something where probably lost upwards of 40, 50 million, being, the 5th round pick instead of the 1st round pick. So I know that hurts, but luckily for them, Shedeur already got money, been having money. Daddy got money, been having money. So money is not an issue, which is great for them. He could just go and ball. So hopefully that'll be the case. But I understand where everybody was coming from. It was a hot mess for sure. But at the end of the day, they got it done. So that's all that matters, right? All right, so let's keep it moving. Next thing we're going to talk about is DTE. And the only reason I'm bringing this up because DTE is a Michigan company. No, that's who handles my electricity bills. And I wanted to talk about it just a little bit because the energy company covering Michigan, like I just said, DTE, is requesting a billing change that will raise prices on consumers by 11%. So basically DTE Energy Company has requested a $574 million rate increase from state regulators, which would raise residential electricity rates by 11.1% starting February 24th, 2026. DTE says the funds are needed to improve grid reliability, transition to cleaner energy, and maintaining service during that shift. Critics argue that the proposed increase is too high. If approved, the average residential bill would rise about $11 per month. The request also seeks a 10.25 return on equity for shareholders and follows a similar but partially denied rate hike from 2023. It's getting tight out here, right? With the tariffs and everything. So I think a big part of this is companies readjusting to the new landscape that's out here in the world. I don't blame them. I understand where they're coming from. But nevertheless, we got to figure out a way to not, abuse customers because of what's going on, in the White House. We as customers don't have anything to do with that outside of the ones who voted them in, right? So, I was a little worried when I first saw it because I know Canada was talking about maybe shutting down electricity in certain Michigan areas, and I was like, that's just crazy-ish. You look up, and because of the back and forth between the new administration and Canada's administration, they talking about potentially shutting down electricity in the Michigan area. So when I first saw this, I thought, okay, what is this about? But $11 a month may not sound like a lot of money, but to older individuals or individuals that's on a budget, $11 every month by the end of the year, it makes a difference for those individuals. So I don't know if this is going to actually be approved, so to speak, but just getting it out there to individuals, just to prepare what we could potentially be up against here in the near future. So DTE, you're on the clock, bro. We're watching you. We definitely got our eyes on you, right? So just wanted to kind of bring that up. Just, it's a Michigan thing. I saw it. I'm in Michigan, of course, and I just wanted to kind of bring it to the forefront. But let's keep it moving. All right. This right here threw me for a loop. President Trump has officially warned President Barack Obama to stay out of Americans' foreign affairs or else face charges for violating the Hatch Act. This is after Obama made plans to visit El Salvador on his way to the NATO summit in Costa Rica, which Trump was not invited to, nor would he go. He has no authority to speak on behalf of the United States. If Obama is brave enough to go, he'll face U.S. Marshals on his return. This could get crazy, right? So, Trump and Obama, they've had a hate-love relationship for a minute, right? Ever since Trump tried to make it seem like Obama wasn't from America. Here lately, you saw them at Jimmy Carter's funeral, hucking it up. So people started to think that maybe they do have somewhat of a relationship, but apparently not. and I haven't heard President Obama's, reply to this. I'm waiting to, see what happens here. But it's just, once again, we have an administration who feels like they are going to dictate what any and everybody does. And I just don't understand like this new way of, thinking. I'm assuming this is like the shakeup that everybody was talking about, that, most people voted for him, because he does have the ability to shake things up. But at the same time, when you start, stopping people from freedom of speech, then what are we talking about here? We're in third world country, dictatorship, arenas, and we're not that type of country. We never have been, and I just don't believe we'll ever be that type of country. I think before that happens, it could get a little crazy around here. So hopefully that's not the case, but a lot of these moves have given me some pause, because it just feels like we have an administration who feels like their way is the only way. And we know that's not true. You come on now. Once again, I'm not from the school of not allowing an administration to do things the way that they feel is best for the country, but you can't circumvent the Constitution. And it seems like a lot of circumventing of the Constitution is happening. I don't even know. I was just thinking about this. Has any bills passed? Has any bills gone through Congress, gone through the Senate, and actually passed because it had the votes? I don't think so. I think everything that's been happening has been based off the executive orders, right? And how can you just run a country and you got two equal branches that's just pretty much sitting on their hands? I haven't heard. I think maybe the budget maybe has come out of the House and the Senate, but as far as any other major pieces of legislation, it's all been forced down our throat via executive orders. And I just remember executive orders when the president that looks like me was in. He had executive orders as well, but I just remember everybody just running around with their hair on fire every time he thought about creating an executive order, like just crazy. And now here we are. Every piece of legislation that's come out of the administration has been basically executive orders. So, I don't know what him and Obama is up to. I just seen over the weekend that, the administration or whoever is a part of, Trump's inner circle, now they're selling merch, hats, shirts for 2028, President 20, and we all know that's unconstitutional. So that's what I mean by it feels like we're in a country. It feels like our president wants to be like some of the other, Putin's other worlds, someone who thinks they can just do it and, the way that it's supposed to be done, their way or the highway. And if given an opportunity to hang on to power until the end of time, it seems like we may have that type of individual, leading us in the world right now. So I don't know I look forward to kind of seeing what that's going to look like in the future here. Like, I can't wait to 2027, 2028 to literally see if they're going to try to pull this off. Because if they do, it's sometimes you don't want things to happen, but I just want to see how the world is going to react to a constitutional crisis if that was to happen. So President Obama, it looks like you got, the new president on your head. So I know you're not concerned about it because you are who you are, but let's be careful out here because in these other countries, individuals thought they were who they were, and they end up being taken out one way or the other. So we haven't gotten to that point, but who knows what these guys might be doing. They're arresting judges. Like I said, they're talking about 3 terms as president. They're sending babies and kids back to countries that they know that these kids aren't going to have a good upbringing in these these countries that's just filled with all kind of drugs and mayhem. So let's see what this dude do, man. Let's keep an eye on him. It's, to me, I'm just exhausted. I don't know if this is a part of the game plan where they just keep constantly bringing craziness to the table. Like, every day is something new. I don't know if it's to get your attention off of what's really going on, but every day is something new. Even the president, in the first article that we talked about, he chimed in on Shedeur not getting drafted. Let the sports. I get it. The president can say and do what he wants to do, but he got bigger fish to fry than to be worried about Shedeur Sanders. Then I see him with the running back from Philly, running around. I'm just like, man, this guy will not just buckle down and do his job. And not to say a president can't do other things outside of being the president, but we got a lot of stuff going on right now. Tariffs out the yin yang, immigration just running wild right now, or trying to get a hold of immigration is running wild right now. So he got a lot of, we got a lot to be dealing with than to be trying to, take our minds off of what's really going on by all this little trivia stuff. So, we'll watch out for that. We'll, like I said, the President Obama chimes in regards to what he said, then we'll bring that news to you guys. All right. All right. So let's keep it moving. All right. So speaking of the president, and look, this is not a podcast where we're trying to dog the president, because that's the last thing I want to do. Because, like I always say, I want the president to be successful, because if he's successful, then where's the country successful? But we're going to just call balls and strikes here. We're going to talk about everything. If it's just so happened, like I said, he does so much where we have to, speak about it. Because if we don't speak about it, then it's a good chance that a lot of things could be happening where we look up, and by us not talking about it, speaking about it, the world has, gone backwards instead of forward, right? So this U.S. Army commander has been suspended after portraits of Donald Trump were flipped over. She looks like she could potentially be Hispanic, but I don't want to say that because I don't know for a fact. But she looks like that's a possibility, and for whatever reason, she's silently upset about something to the point where she felt like she was going to risk her job, her her position as a army commander, to do something as as small as flipping the portraits of the president to face the wall. So drama has hit a U.S. Army base in Wisconsin after reports surfaced that an Army commander was suspended after portraits of Donald Trump were flipped over. According to NBC News, Fort McCoy's leadership posted an official statement on the base's website confirming that the suspension of Colonel Sheila Ramirez. The suspension comes after portraits of former President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth were found flipped towards the wall on the base's chain of command wall. Although officials were quick to state that Mrs. Ramirez's suspension is not tied to misconduct and is unrelated to the incident, they didn't offer additional details because the situation remains under review. On April 14th, the Department of Defense posted images on X, formerly Twitter, that caught everybody's eye. The photos showed both Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth portraits turned backwards at the base chain of command wall. The Department of Defense captured the images with regarding the Fort McCoy chain of command wall controversy, we fixed. Also, an investigation has begun to figure out exactly what happened. Colonel Sheila Ramirez made history as the first female garrison commander of Fort McCoy when she assumed the role in July 2024. Before that, she served as Chief of Reserve Program at the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Known for her commitment to service and leadership, Bias Ramirez's career had been largely without public controversy until now. All right. Okay, so in regards to that, I can't really speak on it because I guess she's innocent until proven guilty. But the thing about politics, and when the Democrats win, the Republicans are pretty much on the sidelines doing everything in their power to disrupt. When the Democrats lose and Republicans win, it's usually vice versa. I don't know her party affiliation. She may just be upset because of, Pete Hegseth and, the president coming in and making all the different changes, to the military, that they feel deemed necessary. And it could just be rubbing, certain individuals whose life has been military, their bread and butter has been military. Their entire professional life has been military. And then you have guys coming in who doesn't have that cachet, just making changes that they don't deem are the type of changes that the military should be up under. So I'm assuming if she didn't do it, somebody who kind of feels the way that I just spoke on did it, and they were just trying to send a message that they don't approve whatever these two individuals, the president and the defense secretary, they don't approve of, their way of doing whatever it is when it comes to the military. That's the bold thing to do when you know if you get caught doing it that the repercussions are going to be severe. This is a different kind of ball game, different kind of military. When I say different type, same military, but just different leaders that's leading the military. So when you do things like this because you're irate or you're mad about how they're going about, you got to be careful because these guys are ruthless. They don't have empathy for you. If you get caught doing something that they deem that's against them, then they're going to try to bury you. They're going to try to take your long, illustrious career and put it in the trash. So you got to be careful while you're trying to make statements out here because they don't care about that. Their bottom line is we're doing what we want to do. This is our agenda. And if you're not on board, sayonara, goodbye. So we'll keep our eye on that as well. If any, new updates come, I'll make sure that I bring those forward. But yeah, be careful out there, guys, because they're playing to keep. And if you're fortunate enough to still be a part of the government, because they've gutted most of the government, and you rely on your job and you want to keep your job, you got to be careful with these guys because their job is to get rid of you if you don't see it their way. You know what I'm saying? So be careful. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's switch it. I thought this was, something that we should. I just like, and it's not just about Black people, but it is kind of because I just want to bring light to people who are, doing their thing, breaking barriers, shattering glass ceilings. And I came across Miss Pamela Goodwine, JD, Pamela Goodwine. She just made history as the first Black woman to be elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court. That's huge, right? Born in Youngstown, Ohio, she spent time in foster care before being adopted. In high school, she gave up a college scholarship to care for her adopted father who had lung cancer. After his death, her uncle murdered her mother. At 24, Goodwin was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, a painful and lifelong condition. She spent 2 months in the hospital, relearning how to eat and walk. She later began working in the legal field as a secretary and court stenographer. She went on to earn her undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Kentucky. Right? Let's keep that up for a minute. As a matter of fact, let's do this. Let's do this. Yeah, let's give her a round of applause because that is a lot to go through. And my people are at Black Millionaires. A lot of my articles come from there. I like that group over there. I don't know who they are, but I just want to acknowledge them because I don't want to be thinking that I'm coming up with these articles. They're doing the hard work. I'm just clipping and talking about it, right? So big up to Black Millionaires over there, but more so big up to Pamela Goodwine, wherever you are. I know you, once again, these people don't know me from Adam, right? But I like to bring those type of, heartfelt stories to the forefront, just in case if someone's listening, that they'll get motivation. She's been through a lot and she still found a way to get to where she was trying to go. Why does my glasses look crooked? I'm sorry, guys. But anyway, she she did her big one. Now she's in the Kentucky Supreme Court. It's a lot of African American individuals, like when our kids do book reports, if they still do book reports and things of that nature, it seems like there's a plethora of individuals that's out there nowadays that they can, speak on, talk about, so on and so forth. So let's give another round of applause to Mrs. Goodwin. Wish her all, wish her well, because I'm pretty sure she's in the midst of nothing but the good old boy network. So although she may be stepping into the position, I don't think her journey and her hard times, hard days are over. She's in Kentucky. She's in the Supreme Court. So, let's wish her well, prayers for her. But at the same time, that's a good job. And, when we see something, we have to, speak on it, because a lot of times these type of stories go unheard. No one brings light to them. They just happen. The next thing you know, they just go about their business. But we don't want to do that. We want to be able to, bring it to our platform and acknowledge these individuals who have worked so hard to get to where they are. And once they get there, we don't want them to be forgotten. All right? All right. Big ups to her. All right. JPMorgan Chase Bank is suing hundreds of customers who took advantage of a glitch in the bank's deposit system after the hack went viral on TikTok. Customers thought it was free money. Now, let's keep it real. Ain't no bank giving you no free money, right? So you just took advantage of what you thought you would be able to get away with. And in this case, they not trying to allow you to get away with it. They suing you, right? So thought it was free money. JP Chase is intensifying legal action against customers who allegedly exploited a technical glitch in its ATM deposit system. A scheme dubbed the Infinite Money Glitch that went viral on TikTok in August 2024. This glitch allowed individuals to deposit fraudulent checks and withdraw funds before the checks cleared, leading to significant losses for the bank. How the scheme operated. The exploit involving deposits large, often counterfeit, checks via ATMs and immediately withdrawn substantial sums before the checks were processed and bounced. Social media platforms, particularly TikTok, amplified the scheme by sharing step-by-step guides, leading many to believe they had discovered a legitimate loophole for free money. In reality, this constituted check fraud, a federal offense. Since October 2024, JPMorgan Chase has filed numerous lawsuits against individuals and businesses across several states, including Georgia, Texas, Florida, New York, and California. The bank alleges that some defendants withdrew amounts ranging from under $75,000 to nearly $335,000 before the fraudulent checks were identified. For instance, a lawsuit filed in Georgia's Gwinnett County claimed a max individual deposited a $73,000 check and withdrew $82,500 before the check was returned. The bank is seeking repayment of the withdrawn funds, interest, overdraft fees, and legal costs. Broader implication, JPMorgan Chase has sent repayment demands to over 1,000 customers and continues to investigate additional cases. The bank emphasizes its commitment to combating fraud and maintaining trust in the banking system, a spokesman stated. We're still investigating cases of fraud and cooperating with law enforcement, and we'll do that for as long as it takes to hold fraudsters accountable. This incident highlights the risk associated with viral financial hacks on social media and underscores the importance of verifying the legitimacy of such claims. Engaging in schemes that exploit banking systems not only leads to legal consequences, but also undermines the integrity of financial institutions. Okay. So I've worked in the banks before, so I understand, how buttoned up they are. I just, with this one, I don't really know how to react to it. You know, if they're all on social media, giving you step by step, does TikTok hold any responsibility for allowing these hacks to just go on and on and on, knowing that people typically take these hacks and employ them? So that's what I'm wondering. Does TikTok have any responsibility in this? The individuals that did what they did, you got to pay. I mean, you can't just give free money like that. When you took 75,000, you knew you didn't have 75,000 in the bank, so that's fraud. I get it. If someone puts a million different hacks on TikTok on how you could take advantage of a financial institution, at least a lot of people will just try it out just to see if it's what the people. That's what I'm saying. Why does TikTok not have any responsibility? Why are they just going after the individuals, which they should, but they also should go after the entities that allow for individuals to even know there was such a thing like TikTok. But I doubt if that's going to be the situation. So, in that case, I think people should be, under investigation. I think if you took money, you should be, in a situation where you got to pay it back. But we'll see how it plays out. Banks, you got to be careful. You got to tighten up your loopholes because when you got all these social media platforms, Chat GPT, criminals are out here looking to figure out if there's a way to infiltrate your system. And when they found the way, that's exactly what they did. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. I don't think you're going to be able to get away with it. I think they're going to, you almost got to disappear, so to speak. But the ones who took massive amounts, 300,000, they on your head. They're going to do everything in their power to prosecute you. So I hope you got a good attorney, or, you took the money and went somewhere where you can be discovered, because they're going to, be at you until they get restitution. So, we'll see what's up. But, banks, y'all gotta tighten your shit up. That's what you gotta do. All right. All right, let's keep it moving. Okay. Ryan Coogler says he doesn't understand why his center's ownership with Warner Brothers is gaining so much attention despite it not being the first of its kind. Ryan said, I have my guesses, but I'd rather not say. All right. So, as y'all know, Ryan Coogler recently dropped that. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So Ryan Coogler original film Sinners has been a box office hit despite it only being on its second week of release. Recently, news dropped that Coogler made an agreement with Warner Brothers, stating that the studio would provide him $90 million to make the film and give him first dollar gross, meaning a cut of the ticket sales, as well as complete ownership of the film in 25 years. Other film companies were reportedly horrified that Warner Brothers would make this type of ownership deal with Coogler. Coogler is speaking out on the uproar his deal has caused, saying that he's confused on why do on this deal because it's not the first of its kind. Other prominent directors, including Quentin Tarantino and Christopher Nolan, have made similar deals. But of course, they're of a different demographic, if you know what I mean. I'll maybe add some context that maybe those articles didn't add. I'm not the first filmmaker to get any of these deals, and Warner Brother is not the first studio to provide these deals to filmmakers. I think that a lot has been made of my deal in particular, but I'm not totally sure why. Like he said, I have my guesses, but I've been in the industry long enough to know what deals are possible, and nothing about this deal is a new thing. When the interviewer asked, "What's your guesses, Ryan?" Coogler responded with, "I would rather not say." But the attention on what's happening with this project outside of it as a piece of art and as a piece of commerce has been very interesting. But for me, this film was very important to me. Coogler then went on to explain how he was adamant about getting ownership of Sinners because it was a personal project and his first movie that was not a part of a franchise. For this one, because it was so personal and because I had the ability to negotiate, I asked for a few things that are very important to me for this project. So, you know, I seen the movie. The movie was excellent. I was, movies just, I don't know, for whatever reason, movies just haven't been good to me here lately, especially like since COVID and since, the writers went on strike and, things of that nature. I just haven't been able to really enjoy a movie front to back. And for the first time, I was able to do that with this movie. So, once again, hey, we said this on a podcast, everything's negotiable. If you don't ask, you will not receive. Closed mouths don't get fed. So Ryan went in there knowing his industry, knowing what other folks, have received, and he put his big boy pants on and went in there and asked for what he wanted. And they gave it to him. Pretty sure there was some concessions in there. He probably didn't get everything that he asked for, but the important things, ownership, being able to get money off of actual ticket sales, and not, just get that front end money, but you get to get some of that long-term money as well. Excuse me. So I don't think that anything that he did was wrong. I think he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He had made some movies now. He was in a position to negotiate. This wasn't his first movie. And he's had success, He did Black Panther. You know what I'm saying? So, he's been in the mix. And then, like you said, this one was pretty much his baby. First one that wasn't a part of a franchise. And he knew that going in. So he was smart enough to negotiate, the back end, negotiate ownership. And I just, once again, let's give Ryan some applause on that. Yeah, he deserved that, right? Just to see like our new version of like a Spike Lee, stepping on the stage and having success. Him and Michael B. Jordan, who was phenomenal in the movie. I think he went in, asked, and he received what he received. And he just opened up the door for future directors to be able to go in and do the same thing. So trailblazing, trend setting is what he was able to do with this power move. And now he opened the door just a little bit more for future directors to step in and, have the ability, hopefully, to make the same type of power moves, right? So big up to Ryan. Look forward to, other movies in the future. Like I said, he's the new Spike Lee, a black film. So, we got to pat him on the back. Once again, opened the door. Once again, broke glass ceiling. And that's what we're playing catch up because everybody else had a head start on us, of course. But now that we're in all these arenas, typically if we get an opportunity, we typically knock it out the park. And it seems like in this case, that's exactly what Ryan's doing. So, that's my guy. I don't know him, but just based off of how he's moving, I like what I'm seeing, right? All right. So big up to Ryan. Sure. All right. Let's keep it moving. What we got going on here? Not that. All right. I came across this and I was a little thrown aback, but most Americans are financing groceries with buy now, pay later loans. I didn't even know you could do that. I'm just kind of getting in the world of ordering groceries and having them delivered, to the house. I used to kind of find it therapeutic to go to the grocery store and, shop. But, I find it even more therapeutic to shop and have it show up, to the front door. So, but I didn't know that you could finance your groceries. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess it's probably good that, that's an option for individuals who can't, afford groceries, especially in these day and times with everything being so high. If you were able to finance anything, being able to finance groceries for you and your family, I'm assuming is a good thing, right? But um, in a survey of 2,000 U.S. consumers aged 18 to 79, about half reported using buy now, pay later (BNPL) services. The use of buy now, pay later for grocery purchases has increased, with 25% of users now using it to pay for groceries, up from 14% in 2024. The survey also showed a rise in late payments, with 41% of users reporting at least one late payment in the past year, compared to 34% the year before. These trends show more consumers using buy now, pay later services to manage essential expenses like groceries during a time of higher prices and interest rates. So, like I said, I get it. I understand. Um, I didn't know it existed, but especially for like college students, but 41% of users are reporting late payments. That's where I kind of see where the issues could derive, or could be future. It could be future problems, right? You know, it's almost like when payday loans. You know, go in, they'll give you a loan until you get paid, but they charge you 69 million% on that particular loan. So in the long run, you end up spending more money. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know what the interest rates are, but I'm pretty sure they're high. And it looks like some people are getting in trouble. So if you're doing this, I would say, you know, don't do it for long. I mean, if you run into a financial situation and you need to feed your family, you got to do what you got to do. But my suggestion was to get it would be to get it paid off ASAP if that's the option that you're going to take, because I'm pretty sure once you get in trouble, they report it to the credit bureau. It affects your credit, and you don't want to get into that kind of situation because you'll probably be better off just having your budget a little bit more conducive to your lifestyle, and making sure that your groceries is a priority. But like I said, if you're in a situation and you need groceries and you know that you have the ability to pay, and when I say pay, I mean pay it off, whatever it was that you borrowed. Because if you borrow, you have to have the inkling that I'm going to pay it off by this time, by this date. So if you're going to do it, I would suggest you have a game plan, because if you default, then they're going to send you to collections. They're going to damage your credit as if went and bought a vehicle and they repossess your vehicle. The difference between that and this is when you have a vehicle, right? They repossess it, your credit's crazy low now because of that. This is groceries, right? And you shouldn't be putting yourself in a position to damage your future, potential livelihood because of, you took a loan out to buy groceries. Once upon a time, there was no loans to buy groceries, and we figured it out. I would suggest that we get back to figuring it out instead of putting ourselves in harm's way by creating a debt that you didn't necessarily have to create. But if you necessarily have to, then I get it, I understand, but have a game plan. Okay. All right. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Where is Mr. Santos with his bad self? No, that's not it. That's not it. Did I bring him up? Nope. All right. So I guess I didn't bring George up for whatever reason. I thought I did, but I guess I didn't. Okay. So I don't know if you guys remember former Republican Congressman George Santos. He was sentenced to 7 years for fraud after blowing campaign money on rent, designer goods, Vegas trips, cosmetic surgery, and OnlyFans. I just remember him just always being out there. He was a new congressman. He was, had his chest out, came up under the Trump administration. He was one of those. types, MAGA types, and he just thought his ish didn't stink. But it looks like, they sunned him. They showed him that his ish does stink, and when you do stuff that you're not supposed to be doing, we don't care if you are a political figure, we're going to punish your ass. And that's exactly what happened. So George Santos just got hit with 7 years in prison after scamming donors and blowing campaign money on rent, designer clothes, Vegas trips. And a federal judge sentenced Santos to 87 months and ordered him to pay nearly $374,000 back. Santos tried to cry in court, admitting he betrayed the public's trust. You wouldn't say, but the judge was not moved. Neither am I. Santos had pleaded guilty to wire fraud and identity theft, stealing credit card info from elderly donors to fund his luxury lifestyle. Prosecutors dragged him, calling him a pathological liar, who even launched a podcast called Pants on Fire while waiting on his sentence. His lawyers begged for 2 years, claiming he was desperate, not malicious. Santos also said he would ask Donald Trump for a pardon. His life unraveled when he came out. He lied about jobs. He lied about his education, even claiming he was Jewish, before switching it up, saying he was Jewish. An ethics report later exposed that he used donors' money for rent, luxury shopping, cosmetic surgery, Hamptons and Vegas trips, and a subscription to OnlyFans. He has until July 25th to turn himself in. So, like I said, I just remember him running around, acting like his ish didn't stink, chest poked out, combative, talking crazy to everybody. Like I said, he was a part of that whole, first round of MAGA individuals that became, part of the government, thinking that, we gonna just believe everything. Once you get in government, you become an open book. So I don't know how people be thinking they gonna get away with stuff. They was talking about it immediately, saying that he was lying about his education, lying about this, lying about that. And he was out there, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, lying, lying, lying. And finally they was like, okay, enough is enough. They, prosecuted him. And now, as you can see, he gets 7 years in federal prison. For what? It was so unnecessary. A lot of times, and there's been a lot of people that's been involved in that whole MAGA world that's gone to jail. Even the president of the United States, if he probably wouldn't have won to kind of turn things back and use the bully pulpit to let everybody know that you're going to be in a line of fire if you don't reverse. President was indicted over 30 plus times. So they come from a world of indictment, a world of, morally acting as if they're so moral, but at the same time, when you're not looking, they're out here doing all kind of mayhem, right? This guy was stealing older individuals' credit cards, just trying to keep up with the Joneses, because he knew when he got himself in this, position that he shouldn't be in this position. He knew it, and we knew it just based off of how he was going about his business. And you couldn't tell him not one thing during that particular time. And now he's in courtrooms crying, like he didn't understand what could potentially happen to him. if he had ever got caught. You know, once you get a little bit of this power, from what I can tell, you typically lose your mind if you're not a real, genuine person. And from the first time he began to speak and, just how he was going about doing things, I could just tell he wasn't about being genuine. He was about being in the spotlight, having power. And in his mind, he felt like once he got the power, once he was under this particular administration, that he could maintain that power no matter what. And, the prosecutor showed him differently. So I don't really feel for him, especially anytime that you're taking from the elderly, to furnish your lifestyle. Your ass need to be raked over the coals. In 7 years, and Trump might pardon him because that's just kind of what he do. And he was a part of the whole Trump mania. So he may not have to do 7 years, but he definitely needs to do some time. So he's down for 7 years, Mr. Santos, and his sentences, he has until July 25th to turn himself in. So he got 2 months, almost 3 months, to figure out his new address, his new way of living, that he's getting ready to conquer. So not a good thing, my boy. Not a good thing, my boy. All right, so let's keep it moving. All right, so once again, let's bring my guy up. Friend Charles launches the largest e-commerce platform exclusively for Black-owned spirits, wine, beer, and zero-proof brands, shipping nationwide. So the ultimate destination to discover and shop Black-owned liquor, wine, beer, and zero-proof brands all in one place, founded by content creator Charles Everett. YourFriendCharles.com is now the largest platform of its kind, shipping to 44 states. Whether you're stocking your bar or shopping for gifts, the platforms make it easy to buy Black with intentions. And filters let you search for woman-owned, HBCU founded, Divine Nine, Caribbean-owned, LGBTQ+, veterans-owned, and more. Explore curated collections, founder stories, and AI-powered product matchmaking, all built to spotlight Black-owned excellence in the beverage. So this is big, man. Once again, you got a brother, out here doing this thing, and we're going to bring attention to it. I'm not going to be ashamed to shine the light on my people that's out here doing major things, right? I would hope somebody would do that for me if I was, moving around, making a change, just being an entrepreneur at a high level. Just like I said, Charles doesn't, know me. I don't know him. He don't know me. But when I see things like this, I just like to bring it to the forefront because there's a lot of people out here that may even, consider or want to be in the space, but don't have any idea on how to get in the space. I just want to bring up individuals that they can look at, not to say that these individuals are going to tell you how to do what it is that they're doing, but the motivation behind it. You may have to do your own due diligence. You might have to figure it out, but then again, you may not have to. You may be able to call, DM, and, have a conversation with these folks, and they can give you some insight on how to get to where they are right now. So that's really why I do it. Just so you might have an opportunity to reach out to these individuals and see if there's a way, you don't want to be crazy about it, but you want to just reach out and maybe see if you can be mentored, or see if there's a way that they can give you just enough information to get you off to the races as well. That's why I do it. Like I said, these people, I'll probably never talk to them, never have any interaction with them at all. But that's not why I do it. I do it because of the potential audience who may need that extra little bit of motivation to get them to where they're trying to go. And these people are inspirational, So if you're looking at this and you was trying to, get in that space, then I would say do a deep dive on Charles and his company, and maybe you can, figure some things out to help you get along on your way to, being the type of entrepreneur you want to be. All right. So let's keep it moving. This was a good story right here too. So this particular lady here, her family was chased off of their land by a racist mob in Texas more than 80 years ago. In 2024, at age 97, she got it back by buying the land for $10 and receiving a brand new home built for free. In 1939, when Opal Lee was 12 years old, a racist mob attacked and destroyed her family's home in Fort Worth, Texas, simply because they were a Black family moving into a predominantly white neighborhood. The mob, estimated at around 500 people, vandalized the house, broke windows, and dragged furniture into the street to smash it. The police were present but did not intervene. Lee and her family were forced to flee and never returned to that home. More than 80 years later, in 2024, Opal Lee, now a 97-year-old civil rights activist known as the grandmother of Juneteenth, was gifted a new home built on the same lot where her family's house once stood. Trinity Habitat for Humanity, which owned the land, sold it to her for $10 and constructed the new house at no cost, with support from local organizations. This homecoming was especially symbolic as it coincided with Juneteenth, a holiday Lee had long championed to become a national observance. In 2021, her efforts were realized when Juneteenth was declared a federal holiday. This homecoming was especially symbolic as it coincided with Juneteenth, a holiday Lee had long championed and became a national observance. In 2021, her efforts were realized, and that was declared a federal holiday. So once again, somebody stepping up to the plate, and regardless of her, she could have quit a long time ago. Can you imagine? Can you imagine you moving into a neighborhood? My neighborhood right now is predominantly Caucasian. I can't even imagine me waking up and my Caucasian neighbors are outside throwing cocktail Molotov in my home, burning it down, dragging my furniture out in the streets, and I have to escape and get away because of the color of my skin, right? So I see why she's, champion Juneteenth and become, civil rights activist. I understand. What would you be if you experienced that in the flesh? She probably was a child. Her parents, were probably the ones who, were the victims of that at the moment, because it was probably their home. They probably had saved up thought they were, progressing through life, moving into neighborhoods they thought they would never be able to move into, get in, start their family, and then one day this happens. And then they have to leave that particular home and never come back. So Trinity Habitat for Humanity, I mean, it's anything Habitat for Humanity, to me, is just a blessing. They've helped so many people, so many people who's less fortunate. They've righted so many wrongs from the past. So it's just one of those companies that's just, they're just A1. I'm not saying that they're perfect because I don't know them in and out like that, but just based off of the majority of anything that has anything to do with, Habitat for Humanity, it tends to be A1 and it tends to right wrong. So that alone puts me in the camp of liking what they do, as a company. I'm pretty sure they're a nonprofit, but the way they give back is just meaningful, it's genuine. And in this case, that's exactly what this was. It was meaningful, it was genuine, and they righted it wrong. So, big ups to her, for just for the Lord to keep her here until she's 97, to be able to see a wrong right by this particular company. What more can she ask for, right? Outside it never happening in the first place, but to get it corrected is a major thing. So, big ups to her for being one of the grandmothers of Juneteenth, which now is a federal holiday. And I'm pretty sure by now everybody should know what Juneteenth is. And if you don't, you need to be Googling immediately so you can know your history. But, for her to be a part of bringing that online, shows you her character, because she could have easily, got discouraged from that situation and, we would have never heard of her again. But, now we're here. She's, like I said, they've righted the wrong. And that's really all you can ask for. It's almost like slavery. And you hear them, talking about, reparations. And to me, it just seemed like if they would have just righted that wrong a long time ago, we would have a much better world today. We're still talking about reparations, 40 acres and a mule. We was in slavery for 400 years. You don't think that was a wrong, a wrong that needed to be righted? And still in some cases feel like you're still in modern day slavery. And that's because that wrong was never righted. Now they want you to forget all about it. They want to, act as if it never happened. You know what I'm saying? So that's just like pouring, salt into a wound. So, but anyway, I really want to thank again Trinity Habitat for Humanity, who sold her that particular lot for $10 and then built her house from the ground up. And the people I used to manage group homes in Fort Worth, Texas, so I know the area well. So that particular community that stepped up to the plate and got that done for her without her having to, come out of pocket $0. That was big for them as well. So good job, Fort Worth. Good job, Trinity Habitat for Humanity. That was big. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, so over 18 million homeowners across the U.S. are house poor. This means they spend more than 30% of their monthly income on housing costs, including mortgages, insurance, and utility payments, according to the Lending Tree study, right? So these house poor households are spending more than 30% of their monthly income on housing, which includes mortgage payments, insurance, and utilities. Who's most affected? California, Hawaii, and New York have the highest rates of house poor homeowners, with nearly 30% in each state spending a significant portion of their income on housing. Over 1.6 million homeowners in these three states are severely burdened, spending over 50% of their income on housing. Where it's least common is in West Virginia, Indiana, and Arkansas, who has the lowest rates, ranging from 13.5% to 16.5%. However, many in these states are still severely cost burdened despite the low percentages, right? Because the top three states with the highest percentage of house poor homeowners, California has 29.9% are house poor, and 46.4% of those are severely burdened. Hawaii, 28.7% house poor, 44.1% severely burdened. New York, 27.1% house poor, 48.7% severely burdened. In the top three states that we just spoke about with the lowest percentage of house poor homeowners, West Virginia, 13.5% house poor, 49% severely burdened. Indiana, 16.4% house poor, 42.2% severely burdened. And Arkansas, 16.5% house poor, and 45.8% severely burdened. And spending 30% always a red flag? Not necessarily. Some financial stable households, especially those with little debt, might handle spending over 30% on housing just fine. In tight housing markets, spending more could even be necessary to secure a safe and livable home. Right? So basically, in a lot of places, your income is pretty much, everything that you put into your house. And then after that, you have, a little bit of something to potentially maybe do, something else, especially in places like New York, California, where the cost of living is high, where real estate is high. So of course your mortgage is going to be higher, your utilities are going to be, everything in those areas, West Coast, East Coast, prime time areas, is ridiculous, right? I do a lot of deals in those areas, and I love them because the prices are so high, so my loan amounts are so high. But if you're living there, I'd be like, ugh, that's got to be tough. And then you go to these other areas, where the cost may not be as much, but the wherewithal to make enough money, because there's not a lot of jobs in those areas. You still end up being somewhat in the same position, right? You may have low costs, but if you're not really making a lot of money, it kind of equals itself out. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. So while y'all out here, spending money and, doing different things like that, you need to really be conscious of where you're living at before you got to look at things like this. They're saying you're house poor because of where you're living at, and nobody wants to be poor anything. But you definitely don't want to be poor when you got a house that you want to live in an area where you can send your kids to decent schools. The crime is low or non-existence in most places. In some places, you don't want to live somewhere and feel broke all the time. And that's pretty much what they're saying. After you pay your bills, you're broke. And you're not going to move or go into a different place because you like shit. I didn't spend this much money to live here, then I might as well just pay top dollar, put all my money into this house, put all my money into the utilities, put all my money. But that ain't really a good way to live at the end of the day. Typically it catches up with you, right? So I get it, I understand, but nobody wants to be poor anything. So, we got to figure there has to be a way that we could get these costs down in these particular areas so people, can have a life where they can live without, feeling like they got to rob Peter to pay Paul after they didn't pay, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, whoever your mortgage loans with, and then DTE, Consumer Energy, Duke, whoever your energy, company, your energy is, whatever company that's with. These people got billions, so they're not going to stop charging you. You can't stop paying your mortgage, so it's going to have to be something done on a national basis to kind of help in these types of situations where you don't have to be house poor. You can live somewhere that you want to live and not have to be house poor, is what I was trying to say. All right. All right. So that's that. All right. Let's get into some mortgage hacks, mortgage real estate hacks. All right, quick delivery. Let's talk about the side lot hack. Buy cheap vacant land next to a distressed property to increase your property value and negotiating leverage. That's funny. My aunt did that. It's property. It was a vacant lot next to a distressed property, and she bought it. And now that particular piece of property is valued a lot more than what she, actually purchased it for. You could do a lot of unique, creative things like what she has on her. She has a garden on there. She fresh fruits, greens, anytime it's Thanksgiving, whatever the case may be, she just goes to the garden and basically, gets whatever she needs to get out the garden, to feed the family. So there's a lot of things you can do with that, but more so than anything, you build equity. So at some point, somebody may come and want that piece of land and would pay you handsomely to have it. So that's a good hack. Okay. No seasoning refinance program. Some lenders let you refinance immediately after buying a property. No 6-12 months waiting period, unlocking cash faster. Definitely a big move. Investors out here picking up properties. Typically you got to wait 3-6 months before you could turn around and refinance them. But there are programs out here that have no seasoning. Actually, I know I have those programs. So if you're interested, you got property, you purchase it, you're trying to, pull cash out so you can keep rocking and rolling. You don't have 3 months, 6 months to wait. DM me. We'll put something together for you for sure. Home buyer rebates. Partner with real estate agent offering cash rebates after closing, can be 1 to 2% of purchase price back in your pocket. So home buyer rebates, you're out in the market purchasing homes. This is a good hack for you. All right. Pre-sale renovation financing. Some hard money lenders, private money lenders, will front you renovation costs before listing a property for sale, helping you sell for top dollars without dipping into savings. Pre-sale renovation financing is kind of new to me. I do renovation financing, of course, 100% renovation financing on investment properties. But this one here was new to me. I thought it was kind of unique. So yeah, if you're listing a property for sale, and you want to help someone, buy the property, and also if the property needs renovation costs, that particular person can come to a person like me, and we can do a full, rehab renovation loan for them prior to purchasing the property. So all 4 of those hacks are good hacks. Now we're gonna I hope those hacks help you guys because, just as time goes on, as we continue to do the show, you can always go back to those hacks and, just gain more knowledge. Even if you're using it, not using it, I'm giving them to you to almost start creating your little dictionary of hacks, so to speak. That way you can become more informed as an investor, more informed as a home, borrower or a home, buyer or a home seller. You're a realtor. You're in the mortgage business. These hacks are to help you to just, find different avenues or different ways, to be better in that space, right? That's why we do that. So plenty more. We're going to give hacks every Monday and Tuesday. So like I said, I want you to just kind of build up like a database of hacks, so to speak, that you can access, at any given time, right? Okay. So next we're going to get off into our deep dive. And today's deep dive is on national business capital. So, just I'm going to bring my two my great duo team who likes to do these deep dives breakdowns for me. I love the way they go about doing this. It was when I, saw that we could actually do this piece, I was excited about it to have it as a part of the Mortgage Mayhem podcast. So I like to just kind of move out the way, let them do their thing, and then I just kind of come back in, give you a quick breakdown, and then, we can end the show. So let's bring them up. Let's let them do what they do. And, I'll be back after they're done.
Just popped up, or maybe investing in some new tech everyone's talking about.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Well, today we're diving into a really crucial piece of that puzzle. commercial financing.
That's right. And for anyone listening who owns a business, this isn't just, dry talk about loans and rates.
No.
It's really about understanding how you can strategically use capital to really fuel your growth. We've got some great info here from National Business Capital.
Right.
And our goal today is to kind of cut through all the jargon and give you the essentials you need to make smarter decisions for your business.
Exactly. We're definitely not aiming for a finance lecture here.
No way.
We want to pull out the practical stuff. Like,
Am I?
how can this information actually help you grab those opportunities, deal with the inevitable bumps,
Mhm.
and really unlock your business's potential?
And we're talking about a pretty significant range here, like financing between $100,000 and up to $5 million. So it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, it really does. And importantly, for anyone who gets a bit, anxious about applying for things,
Which is understandable.
good, checking out your options here, it won't actually ding your personal credit score. That's a big one.
That is a big one. So maybe let's start with the basics. Why even think about commercial financing in the first place?
Good question.
Often it just boils down to bridging a gap, right? Between where your business is now and where you want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine you land a huge contract, great news, but fulfilling it means you need a big chunk of cash up front for materials, maybe hiring people.
Right. Classic cash flow crunch.
Exactly. Financing can step in there. Or maybe the market shifts suddenly, creates a new opportunity, and you need to move fast.
Yeah. Speed is key sometimes.
Strategic financing gives you that agility. National Business Capital mentioned they've done over $2 billion in financing since 2007.
$2 billion. Wow.
Yeah, that number alone kind of tells you there's a huge need out there, and lots of businesses are using these kinds of tools.
Okay. $2 billion is definitely a lot of growth fuel.
Yeah.
So how do they actually do it? What's their approach? They talk about having exclusive relationships with top B2B lenders.
Right. B2B, business to business. So lenders focusing specifically on funding other companies.
So it sounds like they've basically built a network.
Yeah, exactly. And what's potentially really useful about that kind of curated network is the efficiency.
How so?
Well, instead of you, the business owner, having to research and knock on like 10 different doors,
Right, which takes forever.
you might get access to a whole pre-vetted selection through them. They also talk about using a dedicated business finance advisor.
Okay, so a real person.
Yeah, suggesting it's more personalized, someone to help you navigate, because let's face it, it can feel pretty complex sometimes.
Definitely.
And they help tailor the options to what your business actually needs and wants to achieve.
So it's not just like filling out an online form and hoping for the best. There's a human there trying to understand your specific situation.
That seems to be the idea.
They also mention getting funding faster, potentially, than, say, going the traditional route through your local bank.
And in business, speed can be, well, everything sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
If you need to jump on something quick or fix an urgent problem, getting that capital on your timeline, not the bank's, is a huge advantage.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it sounds like they're not just looking at it as a one-time thing either. They mention a long-term perspective, trying to build relationships for, future capital needs down the road.
So more like a partnership.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Less transactional, maybe. Building that kind of relationship could mean, better terms or just smoother access to funding as your business grows and changes.
Okay, interesting. So let's dig into the types of financing. You mentioned the range, 100K up to, actually, they say up to $10 million in some places.
Ah, right. $10 million. That's a wide range.
It is. So what does that typically cover? Are we talking short term, long term?
It likely covers both. Things like shorter term lines of credit, maybe for managing your day-to-day cash flow,
All right.
or potentially longer term loans for those really big investments like buying a building or, major equipment upgrades.
Gotcha. And one thing that jumped out at me was their focus on a streamlined application. Just one application, they say. Simple and fast.
Yeah, for any busy entrepreneur listening, that's music to their ears, right? Less paperwork, less hassle.
Totally. Time is money. And they also say you might get multiple offers from that single application.
Right. And that's key because it lets you compare.
Compare what exactly?
Well, the loan amounts, the interest rates, how long you have to pay it back, the terms. You can look at everything side by side and pick the one that really fits your business, your finances, your goals.
Makes sense. You get choices.
And here's something else that might raise some eyebrows in a good way. They mention no minimum credit score and sometimes no real estate collateral needed.
Really? Because those are often huge roadblocks, aren't they?
Hmm.
Especially for newer businesses or maybe one that don't own property.
Exactly. Now, obviously, the fine print matters, right? It'll depend on the specific loan and lender.
Sure, sure.
But just the possibility of not needing perfect credit or a building to pledge as collateral could really open doors for a lot more businesses.
Okay, so we've talked about the why, the need for it, and the types of financing and how they approach it. Let's get really practical now. How are businesses actually using this money?
Good question. They give some solid, concrete examples, like increasing working capital,
Which is basically,
just the cash you need for your day-to-day operations. They're about making
yeah,
sure you can cover your bills, pay suppliers, that kind of thing. The lifeblood.
get it. What else?
Purchasing inventory.
Hmm.
Maybe you need to stock up for a busy season, or you get a chance to buy in bulk at a discount.
Yeah, improving margins there.
Exactly. Or updating equipment. That's a big one.
Hmm. Investing in efficiency, or
Mm,
maybe just staying competitive with the latest tech.
precisely. Financing can make those big ticket items much more doable instead of draining all your cash at once.
Okay, what about people?
Covering payroll is another key use, especially if you have like seasonal dips in revenue or if you're growing fast and hiring a bunch of new people.
Yeah, the temporary gap.
Right. And then there's the bigger growth stuff. Adding new locations, maybe expanding your team significantly. Financing can be really instrumental there.
And it's not just for, say, tech startups or manufacturers, right?
Mhm.
They list a whole bunch of different industries.
Oh, yeah, really diverse. They mention construction, transportation, e commerce, medical, wholesale distributors, and then they just say many more.
Okay, so it's pretty broad. Seems like most types of businesses could potentially find a use for this.
It really suggests that need for flexible financing is, well, pretty universal across different sectors.
Okay, let's talk process.
Well,
They break it down into 3 steps, which sounds nice and simple. How does it work?
step one is the online application. Secure, they say. Takes just a few minutes. And importantly, zero risk for that initial inquiry. It won't affect your credit score just to see what you might qualify for. And you can upload documents easily.
Frictionless seems like the goal there.
Yeah, making it easy to start. Step two is then reviewing the offers you get back.
Right. Multiple offers we talked about.
Exactly. But it's not just, here's a list, good luck. They emphasize the guidance from their advisors again,
The human touch.
helping you understand the terms, compare apples to apples, and really pick the best fit for your business, your goals.
That expert advice could be super valuable, especially if you're not a finance whiz.
Absolutely. Making an informed choice is crucial.
And step 3.
Step three is getting the money. Simple as that. Once you choose an offer, they deploy the capital.
So you can actually do the thing you needed the money for.
Right. Seize that opportunity, fix that challenge, whatever it is. It's the fuel to take action.
Okay. So for anyone listening who's thinking, maybe this is something I should look into, what's the next step?
Well, the most direct route seems to be their apply now option on their platform. Pretty straightforward call to action.
Got it.
Anything else? Yeah, a couple other things. They have a become a partner program.
Who's that for?
Sounds like it could be for maybe accountants, consultants, people who work with lots of business owners and might want to offer financing solutions as part of what they do.
Okay. Interesting add-on service for them.
Could be. And if you're not quite ready to apply, but you want to stay in the loop and learn more,
Yeah.
they have a newsletter you can sign up for. They say it offers tailored insights, industry news, financing tips.
All aimed at helping you, quote, unlock your business's potential.
Sounds about right. And beyond the newsletter, their website looks like it has a ton of info.
Like what?
Well, details on the different financing options, more about the company itself, the partner program stuff, customer stories, which can be useful.
Yeah, real world examples.
At a deeper dive into how their process works, FAQs, the usual helpful resources. Plus, they're on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, so you can connect there too.
Okay, lots of ways to explore further then.
Seems like it.
So as we kind of wrap this up, what's the main takeaway here, if you had to boil it down?
I'd say the key thing is that commercial financing, when you understand it and use it smartly, can be a really, really powerful tool for growing your business.
Yeah, a strategic tool, not just a loan.
Exactly. And what's encouraging, I think, is that getting this kind of funding might be more accessible and maybe less complicated than some business owners assume.
Right. Especially with options that maybe don't require perfect credit or real estate.
Yeah, the resources we talked about, like from National Business Capital, they offer a really good starting point for you, the listener, to just investigate what might be possible for your specific business.
Absolutely. And thinking about all those potential uses, you know, grabbing inventory, upgrading equipment, expanding, smoothing out cash flow,
Hmm.
and the streamlined process they describe, it leads to a final thought, maybe.
Okay.
What immediate opportunity or maybe what pressing challenge could strategic financing help you tackle in your business right now?
Hmm. That's a good question to ponder, puts it into practical terms.
Yeah, definitely something worth thinking about.
Because ultimately, building a business, growing it, it's an ongoing journey, right?
For sure.
And making those smart, informed decisions about your finances is just, well, it's critical to navigating that journey successfully.
Sorry about that. I think I was on mute there for a second, guys. Yeah, but today, National Business Capital, they're big on SBA loans, equipment financing, lines of credit, revenue-based loans, and approvals are often within 24 hours. They're a big alternative lender, perfect for small businesses, shut out by the traditional banks. For real estate investors and fix and flippers, this could be a creative capital stack play if you're stacking cash or bridging a deal. And they're just one. I haven't done business with them before, but I know a lot of people who have. If you're in that commercial space though, and you're looking, for financing, I think they would be a good option for you. If not, you can always, once again, one of these days, I'm gonna break down exactly what I do and the capabilities I have in the space. I'm just not ready to do that yet, because I just want to kind of get my feet up under me on this platform, on this podcast, and then eventually, once we kind of get it.